How's everybody doing today? Swag Kage here, and welcome to another Naruto video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Kimimaro and doing our best to figure out how strong he is. Which isn't a very easy task, because this guy isn't in the manga for very long. He fights 3 people, then he dies, and then we never hear anything about him again until the war arc. Kabuto does revive him with the Edo Tensei, and while it's implied that he takes out a whole bunch of samurai, we don't actually get to see him in action. So his presence in the war arc doesn't really contribute much here. I guess you can take away from it that he was strong enough that Kabuto saw fit to revive him, but Kabuto also revived a whole lot of featless shinobi who aren't really that impressive, so that information isn't super helpful here either. Now, all this said, I do think I have enough at my disposal to come to a fairly solid conclusion, though there may be a little bit of speculation and hypothesizing here, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me. Anyway, when starting this discussion, there are a couple of important things worth keeping in mind. For one, Kimimaro's a lot younger than people think he is, just like the rest of the Sound 4. According to the second data book, he's only 15 years old when we see him in Part 1, making him about the same age as most of the members of the Konoha 11 were at the start of Shippuden. Another thing about him that absolutely can't be ignored is when we saw him fight during Part 1, he was afflicted with a terrible sickness. And this wasn't just any sickness, it was like terminal illness that, according to Orochimaru, should have been enough to keep Kimimaro from moving at all. This is just one of those things that you have to take into account. Everybody gives Itachi so much praise because, oh man, every time we saw him fight, he was like on the verge of dying, but it was the exact same thing with Kimimaro, and as a matter of fact, I think this guy had it worse because he was supposed to be completely paralyzed. Now, there are a handful of other statements that give the audience a bit of an idea of what Kimimaro could do when he wasn't sick. Sakon says that he had way more potential than Sasuke, and well, you could just write this off as worthless smack talk. I do think it's worth mentioning considering where Sasuke ended up at the beginning of Shippuden. He was easily Kage level, given how effortlessly he dealt with both Team Yamato and Deidara, so if this is true, it's certainly noteworthy. Kimimaro was also said to be the only person capable of keeping Jugo's rage under control before Sasuke came along. The fact that he was able to take Jugo out without killing him and remain calm enough to initiate a conversation with him is at least a little impressive, though it's not the craziest thing he's managed to accomplish. He's also said to have assisted Kabuto and Orochimaru in the assassination of the 4th Kazekage, and more importantly, both of them agree that had Kimimaro been present for Hiruzen's assassination, the operation would have gone a lot more smoothly. Now, this is a pretty big deal because Hiruzen's really strong, and he's the only person in the whole village that gave Orochimaru any trouble. Obviously, the implication here is that Kimimaro would have been able to stop Hiruzen from sealing Orochimaru's arms using the Shinigami, and I guess that's not, super crazy because the two of them were just standing completely still after the Reaper got summoned, but Orochimaru and Kabuto shared confidence in the idea that Kimimaro would survive an encounter with Hiruzen in the first place speaks volumes about the potential that he had when he was healthy. Finally, and this goes without saying, but it's stated that he's stronger than all of the other members of the Sound 5. In the anime, there's even a filler scene where he and Base beats up all of them at once after they've transformed into Curse Stage 2. And that's not super important because it's not in the manga, but if you do want to take this into consideration, it's a pretty interesting feat because, as we all know, the Sound 4, when working together, were able to take out 2 of the 4th Hokage's guards, who were obviously Jonin rank, though I'm gonna have to put a couple asterisks next to all of that. First of all, these Jonin were coming back home from a mission when they encountered the Sound 4, and say that they were out of chakra when the fight began, obviously putting them at a massive disadvantage. Plus, Kimimaro clearly fought much younger and, by extension, weaker versions of the Sound 4, so it's not like he's able to casually deal with multiple Jonin at once in Base or anything that ridiculous, but this is still a really impressive accomplishment, especially considering the ease with which he dealt with the Sound 4. Now, that should do it for most major statements regarding his abilities, but taking a look at his actual fights, they don't really tell us a whole lot aside from his fight with Gaara. When he was fighting Naruto, he shredded through hundreds of Naruto's clones, but that's not super impressive because Sasuke was able to do it with 2 Tomoe Sharingan, and then he beat up a weakened Base fresh out of the hospital Lee. Again, not super crazy, but these fights do give us a surface level glimpse into Kimimaro's abilities. What's really important is his fight with Gaara, though. I don't want to focus on every detail of the fight, just a couple of things that are really important. I think it's pretty safe to say that both Gaara and Kimimaro were easily Jonin level at this point in the series, and the only thing I really need to use to prove that is this scene right here where Gaara creates a literal tsunami out of sand. He covers the entire fucking forest with it and then crushes Kimimaro beneath it. This attack is on a much much larger scale than the giant vortex jutsu that Kakashi used in his fight against Zabuza, and that jutsu was nearly enough to kill Zabuza. The only reason he didn't die is because Haku showed up and saved him at the last second. Kimimaro was able to survive this pressure by entering the second stage of the curse mark, so it's very clear that he has some pretty high tier durability. His attack power and speed aren't quite as impressive. I mean, not to say that he isn't fast or strong, just that those aren't his strong suits like durability is. Lee was able to blitz him by just opening the first gate, and the only reason he didn't take any serious damage was because he was able to protect himself with his bones. It's a bit hard to say how powerful his attacks are since an upper limit isn't really shown, but all I can say is that his strongest bone attack wasn't able to pierce through Gaara's strongest shield. Now, I don't know how Shukaku's shield compares to the sand dome that Gaara created during the fight against Sasuke, but if it's any stronger the way it's implied to be, then it's not super surprising that Kimimaro couldn't pierce through it, especially considering that Sasuke's Chidori, which barely managed to break the sand dome by the way, was a lightning element, giving it a massive advantage over earth-based jutsu like Gaara's sand shield presumably was. The most important thing to take away from this is that since Kimimaro's attacks rely primarily on piercing power, anybody who can make a shield strong enough to protect them from his bones is more or less immune to any attacks from him. But it's hard to say how strong a barrier would need to be to keep somebody safe from these attacks. Now, the Bracken Dance is clearly an exception to this because Kimimaro can fill up the entire battlefield when using this jutsu. And another thing worth mentioning is that he can travel through these bones after he's created them. It's super weird, but he does it right before he nearly kills Gaara. I wish we'd seen more of this jutsu so that we had a better idea of the sort of utility it has, since right now there's not much I can say about it other than that it looks really strong. In summary, I think Kimimaro's very strong, and he's pretty interesting. His strengths clearly lie in close quarters combat. That's obviously where he does best. I mean, he has a handful of ways to use his bones from a range, like he can shoot them out of his fingertips as projectiles, and then he can also use the Bracken Dance to move all around the battlefield to deal with long-range fighters, but for the most part, he's at his most comfortable when fighting in melee. Also, despite his clear disadvantage against opponents who specialize in fighting at long range, he's definitely able to deal with them as seen in the fight with Gaara. I mean, he practically won that fight. The only reason he quote-unquote lost is because his illness killed him before he could deal the killing blow. So as long as his opponent isn't able to overcome his absurdly strong defenses, which includes the ability to regenerate his skin and bones, by the way, there's not much for him to worry about. Overall, I'd say he's low to mid Jonin level. I've seen a lot of people say, he'd never be able to do anything against Guy or Kakashi, and there are exceptions. Kakashi became Hokage, and Guy was fighting Six Paths Madara. But I think Kimimaro would easily give somebody like Asuma or Baki a lot of trouble. Anyway, let me know what you think about both Kimimaro and this video in the comments below. If you have any video suggestions, make sure to let me know. Have a great rest of the day, and until next time, talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye. 戻らないと言って確か